We're back. I'm Tina Trenner. This is Tina and Friends, and we have Tony Barney and Pat Cassell with us here at the show. And we all just witnessed that, just like you. And it was pretty amazing, really. And what's really interesting is that was recorded in 2007. And you know, it's just getting worse and worse. Do you notice all the militants and everything's bubbling to the top? And here we are in America, and we want to enforce laws. I mean, Arizona has done nothing except say they want to enforce the laws that are already on the books. But they had to write one because the federal government wouldn't do it. You see what is being fomented. Where do you think this is coming from? Most Mexican people are kind and nice and wonderful, but this type of thing is what is fomenting this problem. Am I right on this, guys?
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? He brings up about Guatemala and everything and El Salvador, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. All I know is from what I've seen and heard, actually, my understanding is when the Guatemalans cross the border on the train,
southern side of Mexico,
they get shot off. They get shot by the Mexicans.
Right.
I don't see any white gringos down there shooting with the gun. No. I don't see it at all. But what I can say is that I'm for borders. We have to have them. For obvious reasons. Recently, we had a situation in New York, even though that was an American citizen, but he did come to this country legally. Still, you know, we have to look a little closer at people. But the reality is, if you're an illegal, it's as simple as that. The law says legal, then you follow the rules. Everything happens. If you're illegal, get the hell out.
The word
and I'm sorry.
Illegal means something. Hello.
And you broke the law. And listening to that militant approach is wrong. We're not enemies to anybody. I mean, this country was made. It's a melting pot. It's made on people who follow the rules of our country. And if you go to any other country around the world, you have to follow the rules.
Pat, you have to understand something. We didn't think we were enemies with militant Islam either. And guess what we found out? They hate us, and they're coming after us. We never went after them.
Well,
and now we have allowed, and this government has allowed, the folks to come across, wherever they're from, come across the border over and over and over again for years and years, like the last 20-some years, and done nothing about it. Now that we want to enforce the law, they don't want to hear about it. And these type of people are opportunists, and they're going to cause problems. What do you think?
Well, the nation state is essentially derived by the borders that it has. In other words, it maintains its sovereignty by borders that it maintains. And unfortunately, with immigration, we have a lot of confusion with regard to what is enforced by the state and what is enforced by the federal government. I agree with Pat. I was actually in Guatemala 2.5 years ago and heard personal experiences of individuals who attempted to cross the southern Mexican border and the way in which they were dealt with by the southern border guards in Mexico, much more harshly than anything that you hear in the United States. But the problem...
They're not calling them racist.
No, they aren't. And in fact, they're just as vigilant about keeping their border from being porous.
Counselor, I have a question for you.
Sure.
My understanding is if an American wants to live in Mexico, we never own property.
You have to own it with a person from Mexico, and you can only own 49%. Is that right? I think that's it.
I'm not familiar with the laws in Mexico on land ownership.
They give you like a 99-year lease or something to that effect.
I don't know, but what I do know is that part of the problem that we're dealing with on the national immigration scene is enforcement of civil and or criminal violations of the INA, which is the Immigration and Nationality Act. Under the act, we have two sides. We've got the criminal. We also have the civil. And the civil side, interestingly enough, has always been enforced by the federal government, whereas the criminal side has been enforced by the states and the federal government. The problem that you see is that where the federal government doesn't enforce the criminal or civil side, the burden and what's left over is left essentially to the states to enforce. And that's the problem we have. A lot of people think with immigration that if you're here illegally, that automatically that's a criminal offense, and it's not. If you're here illegally, that's a civil offense. Now, if you're deported and then you come back into United States, that then becomes a criminal offense. And interestingly enough, the laws that we're seeing with Arizona, which is a recent example with Governor Brewer passing the law. She only passed essentially a law that has really been in effect throughout all the states, and that is that if a police officer pulls you over for another offense, that he can ask you about your immigration status under his job to enforce criminal or curb criminal conduct.
Who don't they ask for their, show me your driver's license, show me your registration.
Correct.
Anytime I get stopped, they
Correct.
ask
They
that.
do a background check.
Correct.
They want to see if they have any outstanding warrants, et cetera.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, that's normal.
They're running your license plate when they pull you over, are they not? They've
That's
already put all
profiling.
that in.
I'm going to use you to get me off on that next time. I'm going to sue.
Yeah.
The problem is that it really isn't profiling, because you are essentially pulling somebody over, for instance, in a traffic stop for a violation that they've already made. And so essentially what a lot of people argue is, well, that becomes the pretext then for stopping illegal people from being in the United States. Well, I guess you could say that, but the fact is if you're in violation of the laws, you have then opened yourself up to an examination as to your legal status or illegal status.
We have the 31 flavors of law breaking in this country. Every day people choose which law they want to. I'll just break that one today.
But here's the thing, though. If you're here, what you're saying, so I come across the board, I'm working here, and I'm not legal, but I'm not illegal. It's because I'm not deported. What's the problem then?
Well, under the INA, it's just you've committed a misdemeanor, essentially, by being here illegally. Now, if you are deported and you come back in, now you're facing a criminal penalty.
So you're saying then, I can come here, and they'll deport me if they get me because I'm illegal. The question I have is, if I'm driving my car with a non-American driver's license, am I breaking a law?
Wait, we've got to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to
We'll
have to
answer that
wait.
later.
We will answer that in just a minute. And I just want you to think about La Raza being in the White House. Yes, be right back.